9/11, Americans realized they were vulnerable. Security was dramatically tightened, particularly at airports and on planes. Air marshals armed with handguns were assigned to flights, and some pilots began carrying pistols in the cockpit. Suddenly, a blazing shootout with hijackers at 30,000 feet in a pressurized passenger cabin was a real possibility. There's a popular belief that a single bullet hole through an airplane's fuselage will cause a depressurization so violent that the plane will break up in midair. That is simply not true. What does concern aviation safety experts are stray bullets hitting passengers. There is a special kind of bullet that substantially reduces the chance of a ricocheting shot hitting an innocent passenger. It's called the frangible. Unlike conventional bullets that remain intact, frangibles penetrate flesh but break up into small, less harmful pieces upon contact with anything hard.
Conventional projectiles are made with a lead core and a copper jacket. Now we have sintering and copper matrix technology and other metals that don't have to use a jacket. And so basically the bullet turns to dust when it hits a steel target or any really hard object. This has gone a long way to reducing the overpenetration problem.
Centerfire, the major maker of frangibles, says of its product, "Our bullet can penetrate a bad guy's head, but it won't come out the other side." Frangibles are packed with finely ground copper and tin. Specific manufacturing details are proprietary, but the ground metals are combined either by high-pressure packing or with a bonding agent, such as nylon or polyurethane. Frangibles are being used increasingly by police and the military.
Problems that we had with the standard ball was overpenetration, shooting in one room, exiting through another, taking out friendlies on the other side. So what we came up with to prevent this from happening was a frangible round designed to fragment on contact. So we have Marines training room to room with live ammunition.
Many police shootings occur at close range. In some cases, the target is no further away than the end of the muzzle. The bullet can pass through the target and still have the force to hit a wall and bounce back at the shooter with deadly effect. Police officers have been killed and wounded by their own shots. A frangible will break up before it can bounce back.
But the focus today with the frangible is protecting our own inside a close quarter environment.
Frangibles are just one member of an immense family of bullets with a huge range of different characteristics. Almost all bullets, though, are literally the tip of a much larger self-contained package. The bullet is the projectile part of a cartridge. Traditional bullets usually have lead cores, covered by a hard jacket of copper or brass. The bullet is gripped at its base by a brass casing, which also holds the propellant and the primer. The propellant inside the casing is smokeless powder, finely granulated nitrocellulose. The copper or steel primer cup at the base of the casing holds an explosive, which is pressure sensitive. The fully assembled bullet and casing is a cartridge, or round. Whether used in a single-shot weapon or one fed by a magazine of ammunition, each cartridge must be cycled through the weapon and fed into the chamber.
The chamber is where the combustion takes place. When you pull the trigger, the firing pin hits the primer. The primer contains a very small amount of explosive compound which produces a flame. Flame goes through a small hole in the base of a case and ignites the powder charge. The powder charge burns, does not explode, it burns, and it moves the bullet out the barrel and also gives it a twist, usually a right-hand twist, and that twist is what stabilizes a bullet in flight. sounds simple. Took about 500 years to figure out.
The development of the bullet was slow compared with the pace of improvement in the weapons that fired them.
The earliest projectiles would have been stones, rocks, something that was thrown by hand first. The caveman would have evolved from basically throwing stones to perhaps the atl, which was basically a spear projectile, eventually moving into projectiles that were used oftentimes on shafts, that is, as javelins, as arrows, as a spear, and also as hand arms, darts.
Around the 9th century, the Chinese invented gunpowder. Firecrackers scared off demons. Simple rockets provided delightful spectacles and were also used as primitive weapons.
The Chinese soon learned that they could also project projectiles out of tubes. Some of the first firearms were nothing more than a bamboo tube with a polished rock and some gunpowder thrown in the bottom.
It took hundreds of years for the secret of gunpowder to make its way to Europe. It wasn't until the 13th century that Europeans began experimenting with it and its uses. Soon after, they were producing the first handguns and the world's first real bullet, the round lead ball.
The history of the round lead ball basically spans centuries. Part of the reason for that is the round projectiles would have been easier to load into the barrel than others. They're also possible to standardize in terms of weight.
Lead is a commonly occurring metal found around the world. Its low melting point makes casting lead balls an uncomplicated low-tech process. Using the simple lead ball, however, was complicated, slow, and unreliable. The gunner had to pour black powder into the smooth metal barrel and ram the ball into place. Next, he had to prime the flash pan with a small amount of powder. After all this, when he pulled the trigger, the gun didn't always fire, because the powder didn't always burn.
If it got wet, it was totally useless, and it was hard to keep it dry. Napoleonic-era armies rarely fought running battles in the rain.
Another even more serious problem was fouling. The buildup of residue in the smooth metal barrel, burning gunpowder, and lead from round balls left heavy layers in the barrel, quickly rendering the gun unusable.
And in a time of battle where you can be expected to fire 40, 50 rounds during a one day's engagement, after 10 rounds your gun may become completely useless to you if you're not able to clean out that burned up fouling.
With nothing better to replace it, the round lead ball ruled for 5 centuries. Then, in the 1800s, over a period of less than 50 years, 4 separate discoveries would come together to create vastly more effective bullets. The word frangible comes from the Latin word. The bullet continued to change to meet new demands. Late in the 19th century, Hiram Maxim's rapid-firing belt-fed machine gun worked best with a bullet tailored for it, pointed and more slender.
Now we can fire guns at rates of 600 and 800 rounds a minute, where before in the Civil War it was 3 rounds a minute.
The murderous efficiency of the machine gun and the new bullet was proven on the battlefields of World War I. In a deadly escalation, the British developed the tank to protect their troops from machine gun fire. To defeat the tank, the Germans created the first armor-piercing bullet. The German J round, a 13mm or 50 caliber armor-piercing bullet, gave them a chance against behemoths of steel.
You could have 2 men armed with this gigantic rifle firing armor-piercing rounds at British tanks and put them right out of commission fairly quickly.
The armor-piercing rounds were created by inserting a solid core of steel into the center of conventional bullets to keep them from crumpling when they hit a tank. In a later development, this core was reinforced with a nickel-cadmium plating. Even the most devastating bullets are useless if they don't hit their target. To help gunners see where their rounds were going, Army ordnance officers looked back in history to the Civil War for answers.
being able to visually identify where your projectile is in flight, easily have developed from lubricant used on various projectiles of the black powder age. Sometimes they would leave a little smoke trail as the bullets went downrange.
Smokeless powder had eliminated the trail, so the tracer bullet was created by attaching a pellet made of magnesium and phosphate to the base of an ordinary bullet. When the bullet is fired, it is clearly visible. Usually every fifth round is a tracer. Military bullets have undergone numerous refinements over the years, but their basic design has remained much the same since World War I. Lead cores wrapped with copper, known as the full metal jacket. Most bullets today are far better than they were 20 years ago, much better than they were 10 years ago. While some are deadlier than their predecessors, others actually offer the chance to save a life rather than take one in a shooting. The challenge is determining which to use in what situation. The single-shot muzzle-loading rifle caused 80% of all wounds during the Civil War. Its primary bullet was the conical-shaped mini-ball. Bullets will return on Modern Marvels. Bullets today come in hundreds of different sizes, shapes, and weights. Determining which works best depends entirely on what the shooter wants the bullet to do when it hits the target.
The target is everything. The bullet is designed for the target. You can shoot holes in paper, or you can shoot holes in quarter-inch mild steel armor plating. You can hunt elephants, or you can hunt squirrels. And you can't do all of that with the same cartridge.
Police need to be able to stop a dangerous suspect. Soldiers need a bullet that will penetrate an enemy target. Hunters want to kill their prey as quickly as possible.
As an example, the .22 short, as fired out of this rapid-fire pistol made by Benelli, is probably only powerful enough to punch a hole in a piece of cardboard on an Olympic target. On the other hand, the .45 Long Colt, with its 250-grain solid lead bullet, as fired out of the Smith & Wesson Model 25 revolver, is certainly powerful enough to stop a human being.
In the world of bullets, size matters. Size is the diameter as expressed in caliber.
When we're talking about caliber, what we're really discussing is a measurement of the diameter of the bullet itself, usually described either in millimeters or decimal inch.
American ammunition makers usually measure diameter in fractions of an inch. A .22 caliber bullet, commonly referred to simply as a .22, measures 22/100ths of an inch in diameter. The U.S. military usually calculates caliber in millimeters rather than fractions of an inch. Thus, their long version of the .22 caliber round is designated as a 5.56 millimeter. The long and the regular .22 round have the same size bullet. It's the casing size that varies.
For example, the .45 Long Colt caliber cartridge has a bullet diameter of .451 or .452 in its modern loading, which is the same as the .45 ACP cartridge as loaded for the old .45 government model automatic pistol. As you can see, they're two completely different cartridges, but the same caliber.
The longer the cartridge, the more powder it holds. The more powder it holds, the faster you can drive the bullet. The faster you can drive the bullet, the more energy it builds up.
The basic rule is, the bigger the target, the bigger the bullet needed for optimal effect. Less powerful bullets with short cartridges, such as the .22 and the .25, are used mostly for target practice. Police and military prefer medium caliber pistol bullets, such as the .45, powerful enough to stop an aggressor without continuing through to hit bystanders. The larger the round, the greater the amount of powder propelling the bullet. Military and police snipers typically use a .308 or larger caliber rifle bullet to achieve instant disabling of the subject. The round's higher velocity also makes it more accurate at great distances. The size and power of the bullet aren't the only factors that affect what happens in that critical moment when the bullet hits the target. The bullet's shape, as well as the materials used to make it, affect its performance.
If you are going for a long range, you need to make the bullet streamlined. If you're going for maximum tissue damage at short range, you can have the bullet be blunt or hollow.
On impact, the jacket of a hollow point instantly peels back, exposing the soft lead core, which then expands against the target.
Modern bullets use a hollow point design, which is designed to mushroom. And what this does is it makes the front surface area of the bullet much larger, transfers much more of the muzzle energy to the suspect.
A solid-nosed bullet penetrates a soft target more easily because of the hard copper and zinc alloy wrapped around the soft lead core. Used by NATO military forces, this is the bullet known as the full metal jacket.
We're basically restricted to the standard ball round. Industry offers expanding bullets, flattening bullets, mushrooming bullets, but law of war, the Hague Convention, restricts us to rounds that will not induce undue suffering to the combatant.
In recent years, because of environmental concerns about lead, the U.S. military has changed the lead cores used in its bullets. Hundreds of live fire training sites and civilian firing ranges across the country have been closed because of lead contamination.
Lead causes birth defects in children. It can cause memory loss. Lead has a bunch of very negative environmental aspects to it.
It's an environmental issue, and it's one of our major concerns is cleaning up the ranges that have been contaminated with lead. And one of the efforts the Marine Corps is taking right now is to overhaul our small caliber ammunition and transition from lead to a tungsten nylon projectile.
The lead-free replacement is called the green bullet, which is also a frangible. Tests confirm that while it is environmentally friendly, it's just as lethal on the battlefield.
And that was one of the things that we made sure that we were going to do before we fielded a green round, is to make sure that we were getting the same product minus the lead.
For all U.S. forces, replacement of lead core bullets with those made with tungsten, tin, or nylon cores is scheduled for completion by 2008.
Since the matrices contain no lead, of course, you don't have the lead cleanup problem that was the environmental problem of the past.
In addition to the materials used to make it, a key factor determining the impact of any bullet on the target is its muzzle velocity.
Muzzle velocity is simply the speed or the velocity with which the bullet leaves the muzzle of the gun. It's the fastest it's ever going to go. From that point on, it will be slowing down.
Because of modern higher energy powders, the bullet's initial velocity can be as high as 5,000 feet per second, or 3,400 miles per hour.
No matter how streamlined you make a bullet, air resistance still works on it. Gravity affects it somewhat. If you held a bullet alongside the muzzle of a rifle and dropped it at the instant you fired, the bullet you dropped and the bullet you fired would hit the ground at the same time.
In recent years, high-speed cameras and computer models have greatly improved the ability to evaluate bullet performance. Complex equations help predict the effect of design changes. But there are still surprises in the firing range.
In the end, you have to get out and shoot the thing. A number of bullet companies have gotten pretty badly burned in the past because they designed something that looked great in the lab and looked great on paper but didn't work so well in the field. So you need about half scientific testing and about half real world.
In the real world, failure to use the right bullet can have deadly consequences. A competition pistol champion may shoot up to 100,000 rounds of ammunition per year.